Hi Suzanne Lee and Gillian. Super that you're here. There's quite a few people here already. Wow. Lovely. Happy Monday to you, Lee. Is it Monday? I don't know. I'm just losing track of the days here. I'm not quite sure what's going on. I presume it's Monday. Always used to be filled with dread when I used to go into the when I was teaching at school, and it was like Monday morning. Oh, I'm going to get through the week. But we do. And it's a lovely day out there today. It's Laura working in the garden, and a little bit of breeze, which is also nice. So let's have a turn around and look at where we left off yesterday. That's it here. And hi Cheryl, nice that you could make it. That's brilliant. I'm thrilled actually that you're getting to see the two-stage process of building up this landscape painting using cold wax, and now I'm ready to add some dry pigment into the next layers. So I did post the photo of where I left it last night, and on my cover page, I think, on my personal page. But since you've seen it from yesterday, what have I done? I've just strengthened the darks in the negative shape to bring out the trees just in here. So I've just kind of gone in there with the negative shape, and I've added a tiny little bit of blue in here to again highlight the negative shape of the trees and give you that sense of recession going back behind the trees. And I've also added in some warmth, some sort of yellower greens over these cool greens to just help to push the form out. So I think that's a big step there. Hi Helen, hi Andrew James, hi Libby, hi Eileen, hi Rita, Valerie. Fantastic, lovely. So just playing with that palette of warm and cool and transitioning through from one green to another green, really mixing from different blues or starting with different greens. So here we go, like cool, warm, cool, warm, cool, warm, cool, warm, cool, warm. So we're kind of getting a whole level of interest by pushing these greens in and out. So it really does mean that you play a cool green here against a warm green on the other side. Doesn't matter which way you do it, but these forms help to balance each other, and I find that really helps. So I might, for example, if I want to push something into the light, say something here, I would just bring in a little bit of warmth. It doesn't need to be very much, and you will see how quickly that edge now sits out against that, just because it's got a warmer green next to it. So that warmth really plays against the cooler green. And when I because I'm working with cold wax, what I can do is, I can just push that paint in to the surface if I want, and just get this sort of very atmospheric feeling of light and movement. More so, I'm actually really interested in movement. It's that feeling of the wind, coming across that landscape. That's what this is really. That's what we get here. We get a lot of wind, and it whistles across down the valleys here in the Cotswolds, and that's a big feature for us. So I like to capture a little bit of that in my painting. So we'll go back to the black and white study here. And what I have, hi Pamela, hi Phil, oh so brilliant you could make it, Philippa, Richard and David and Brenda, hi, we're Brenda. This was the setup that we had, and I had divided it up into a grid and then had two triangles. I have to be careful that these two triangles aren't the same, because that could be a little bit unbalanced, but but quite an interesting diagonal going through the foreground there. Splitting up the foreground can be a useful way of dealing with it. Otherwise we do end up with very boring looking foregrounds. So doing a device like division or adding these sheep in here will help. And as we said when we were looking at this tonally, this is a dark tone, middle tone and light tone. So we have three values, three very clear values, and within each value it is broken up. The light value is very light. When I'm working from a black and white, it means I can use, hi Georgina, it means I can use a little bit more imaginative colour. I don't have to stick to greens. I mean, I sort of am, because I quite like green, but if you didn't want to stick to green and you wanted to do a pastoral landscape in a different colour palette, you know, in blues and browns or something, you know, this would also work really, really well as a monochrome. And, you know, using the wax, adding wax into your paint just helps you move it around a little. I'm just going to show you something we did a little earlier. So done a little bit more work on this one. So this was the yellow iris painting that we were doing about last week. And what's happening here is, you know, I'm starting to use the wax and I'm pushing it and pulling it. So I'm breaking the background and pulling colours out of the background, you know, and that's the beauty of wax, really, that you get a long playing time, you can work for it for a long time. So that's one that I've done a little bit more work on since you saw it last as well. So let's go to our pastoral scene here, and what we're going to do now is we're going to add a layer of wax over this. So I've just put some wax on a piece of paper. And, you know, it's a second pass on this painting. It's fairly dry. It's not too bad. But I can come in with this layer of wax. Now, if you notice, I really just put it in one direction. And I don't go backwards and forwards. I'm really just giving that a layer. Just picking up any bumps. Sometimes it looks a little bit like orange peel. I'm just putting that layer of wax on. So what again we've done is, oh hi Margaret, nice to see you. What that really helps is now again we've got a layer where we can add paint to, because if it gets too dry, you find that you can't sort of get the workability. So, you know, knowing how, it's a bit like watercolors, you have to know how wet your painting is to really get the most out of it. And if my painting is a little dry and I want to work a little bit looser, you know, like the iris painting, I'll put a layer of cold wax on like that, and then now start working in with the next layers. I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to this right now. I've got that more or less blocked in, and the lights and darks and middles for the moment, and I need to look at this. We have a sort of a kind of an opportunity here to you know, kind of think about how we want to work with this color wise, and I'm going to just, you know, maybe add a little bit of shade to the green in the background there. So I'm just going to make that a little cooler. I just think it might benefit from having a little bit of spatial recession. So this color can have white, so you know, when you're mixing it up, you might want to you know, try doing something like this, where I have 3 lots of white. Got a green here from another project, so let's take that off and, you know, get some green on like this. I'll just check that you can see that. Yep, you can. You know, just get some green and some, I've got a dirty palette knife, but in this case it's good because I don't want to clean a colour. I've got different, if I want to work different values here of a particular colour, you know, I can, this was the Cinnabar green light, so I'll put it in here. So that's looking nice and warm. for the moment. There, that's looking nice and warm. Grab all this because this is useful too. That's looking nice and warm, so I can have that value there, and I can add a little bit of that white in here. Now remember, white does make colors cooler, so you know, bear that in mind. When you add titanium white to anything, it's becoming a tint, and tints are cooler. Black could do the same thing actually, because black acts like a blue. So you know, just be careful. Now I'll get a little bit more of that. Actually today I'm going to use the Richardson Shiva Yellow Citron, and we can see how that works as opposed to the Williamsburg that we've been using. It's nice to try something slightly different, and you can see. So with that, so again, we are thinking about our values here. And into that, I'm going to add a little bit of ultramarine blue to make that a cooler green against that warm green. Can you sort of see that? So we have a warmer green, a warm green, cool green. Now I'll take that Citron Light again. As I say, this is a Richardson. This is a lovely Richardson green, which I also buy in massive tubes. And people who know me and are my friends, particularly my American friends, whenever we meet, they usually either give me a big tube of this or a packet of multimedia board. So here we have a warm light. Okay, so we've got the 3 values of green. Oh, hi Laura, nice to see you. So now we have the 3 values. Did it froze? Hopefully it'll probably just come back in and out. It's just my whole family are not on the internet, I'll make sure. Nope, they're not on the internet. So we've got the 3 values of the different greens, and you know what we can do from that is now we can add wax. But as I say, you know, warm, dark, cool, mid, warm, light. And you could go darker and you can go lighter here, so that's okay too. You could do that. So with this quantity of paint, I just wanted to show you this because, you know, often I mix and it's not where you can see it. So for that quantity of paint, I would add that much wax. Okay. So what is happening here is the paint's getting more translucent. It's a little under 50%. Paint's getting more translucent. You can see how the color changed. Well, not the color changed, but the surface changed of the paint. But it didn't lose its chroma. And that's the thing I think to understand when you're mixing wax into paint. You know, there comes a point when you mix things and the color chroma changes. And that can be problematic, and that is when really you start creating mud, which is fine if you want mud, but if you're doing a landscape painting like this, where you are working with specific greens, mud isn't really very useful. It's fine for sea paintings, abstract sea paintings or something like that. You can make as much mud as you like, but not in these sort of paintings. So again, you know, I'm quite fussy about how much wax I add into my paint, and it would be that much. So you can see I don't get a chroma shift. Probably should do one with too much, and then you could compare that with what not to do, perhaps. It all depends on what you're after. Okay, that much there. So, you know, that has kept the same. Now, let me just mix something up for you with too much wax. What I really need is a little piece of paper to show you. What that is like. So we have the 3 values of green. Okay. Now I'm going to mix one where I think is probably a little too much wax. Let's do it with the darkest colour. It looks nice on the palette. Think, oh, that's nice. You might think that's nice. Now you might want to use that. But can you see how the chroma value has disappeared? So if you want that green and you've mixed too much wax into it, it's a little lighter, but it's just the fact that the chroma has been so diluted with the wax that it's become a color that won't sit out and do anything. It will act like a glaze more than anything else. So if you wanted to glaze with that color, then you could do that. And glazing doesn't mean like adding something shiny. Glaze just means just adding a transparent layer over the top of something, and it could be something that is a little you know, that is a little waxy like that. So, you know, I just wanted to show, whoopsie, have I got you in screen there? Sorry about that, guys. Oh, there we go. I just wanted to show you that as a way that I'm mixing my colors down here where you can't see them. So we're good to go with these lovely greens. You know, having the power to be versatile with greens can be such a fun thing. And I think, Eileen, you wanted to see that. That's the Citron Green. That's a Richardson oil paint. It's a Shiva series, Shiva Yellow Citron. Okay, that's a shift from there. That one is the Williamsburg Cinnabar Light. Now, we need a sort of a slightly cooler, darker green back here and a lighter green here. And we have layered, you know, wax on here as well, so that we have got an opportunity to perhaps not go overboard with too much wax. Let's get painting. I'm just going to layer this darker green, the darker green we mixed up in here. I'm using a palette knife just so I can control it a little bit. Into that. I'm going to make an even darker value green here. Because I loved our values, but we could have gone a shade darker. And notice I say shade because when we are going darker and we're adding something like black, or I've added ultramarine into this mix, that has gone darker there. Right, that should do it. So now we've got 3 values there. Dark and then the light value. We're going to need that darker green when we get to the foreground. And we're now going to add the lighter value in here. And that's why, you know, it's nice to have 3 lots of white that you can, you know, happily mix. You can happily mix. So can you see when I add that light value against that, you can really see it. But the greens are all known to each other. They're all mixed off the same base, so they all work together. Now don't worry about tidying things up at this stage. What I have to do is just get the paint down. I can tidy up later. So the main thing is get that paint down. And you can fix up how you're going to, you know, wherever you want that lighter green. Those orange blobs are my sheep. I painted them in orange so I could see them. Sometimes that kind of helps, and it gives them a nice warm colour underneath anyway. Now that can go that way. So I can get a bit more. This is in the foreground, so I can get, you know, I can really get a bit more. Now I'm going to pop the sheep in. And over that orange, I'm just going to put them in here like so. Just again so I can see them. Wherever they happen to be. 2 little lambs there. They're just little dots really. You can hardly see them in the landscape. But they have a particular shape, sheep, in the landscape. They, for those of you that want to paint sheep, they are a triangle that comes up this way. Okay. Then they have a leg, usually it comes downwards, and a leg that goes backwards, and a head that sits just off that angle. So he has, I'll do it on this one, he has a triangle shape that comes up like so. Head that comes down and legs that go inwards. It's just something to do with the way that they eat grass like that. And the little lambs are usually not eating and usually running around, so they're a bit more straight. So I've popped them in anyway, and I can add more later, but it's quite nice to have a few in. And they tend to be similar sort of colours. Okay, so we popped our sheep in, just marked out where they're going to be. And now we're going to just add a slight touch of dark green, of the darker value, around the bottom of them. It's almost like they're in shade, so we just get a little bit of that darker green. And doing that, you see, we can change the form of them as well if we felt that we wanted to do that. So I could reduce that one a little bit. We just want them to sit in the landscape. So adding this darker green underneath, it's just helps to push them back down into the grass. So I've got quite a bristle brush here, and I'm just now, which is why I quite like leaving the paint loose like this, because I can actually come in with a brush now and, you know, play around with getting that right, which if I'd been fussing about it right at the beginning, I would have probably, you know, lost the thickness of the paint. So paint negatively the sheep. They're not Lego characters, you know, they are living things. So let's just work our way along. Now I could get the squeegee out and do some of this too, but it's quite nice to you know, let this paint set up a little bit so that, you know, if I want to come in with the squeegee later I can, but I've got a nice amount of paint here to play with. As the grass comes towards us, it's going to get a little warmer, so we're going to add more of that darker green, the darker green value into that. Van Gogh is a very good one to look at for this actually. He really places things and they become part of the landscape. Now we were looking at a little bit of it, you know, with Bonnard, you know, this idea of colours being part of the landscape. There's a difference between local colour and tonal colour. So really this grass is local colour. This is green grass, and that all makes sense to us that it would be here. These sheep are totally inside, right. So that nice value shift is quite a, you know, it's quite a good thing. That is such a cool green next to this. So it's reading really well. If I wanted to blend that a little, you see I can come in with that squeegee and just soften that edge here and here. So you can soften that so it just disappears. The brush is a little harsh for that, so I do like that, working with that squeegee like this. So for when things drop on, you know, that's the trouble with bristle brushes, they do tend to drop bits, and it's really annoying when that dries on your painting because you can't dig it out. So as the grass grows further back, these lines get smaller just because it's perspective. So it's quite nice to have a few of those little edges. And of course we've got that lovely red underpainting. It's sitting nicely at the moment. And I can decide if, you know, a few of those sheep need a little slightly darker underneath here, so that they are sitting in the shade. Don't need to paint every single sheep, but a few of them need to be believable. Okay, foreground time. As I say, I'm not worrying about the background. I just want to do this bit where I can get into some of the pigments and other things. So we've got these lovely greens here, and when we're looking at the tonal value, that this was actually very mid-tone compared to the back. So having that sort of difference between this value and that value will help us to go into that. And if we look at this and we think mid-tone, and it's cool down here, it's cool, warm, cool. It's going to be cool green, so helping us to make our decisions. And in this painting, these greens were cool. But we don't want to be as cool as that. That's really cool. So we need a cool, to mix a cool green. And we can use some of the greens that we had for... And it's a darker green. So if I use the greens that we've already mixed up, for example, so that was our warm green, you know, if I added a touch of turquoise into that, there's even a bit of blue there, we've immediately got a cool green. That's really helpful because this green was already on our palette and we just made it cooler by adding the cobalt turquoise. Just making sure you can see that. You know, by adding the cobalt turquoise. Oh, there, I lift my arm up, but oh, that's exercise. So, you know, they're already just mixing colours from what we already had. So it's not going to come too much of a shock. And we have still got the green that we originally mixed as well. So that's one way of doing, you know, if you mix up enough paint, you know, you can then, you know, have the opportunity to use any of these colours again. So let's do that. And so I'm going to take this. And I'm going to use a roller. Sorry. Roll that cooler green into that. I'm actually going to add a little brown into the bottom because there's a little bit of mud there, and that is also quite nice to anchor things. So I've got some raw umber. Yeah, do play around with that Richardson green and the Williamsburg. You know, it's really nice sometimes to have two colours from different the same colour from different manufacturers. Use them in the same painting. You sort of gets this interesting, get an interesting vibration from that. You know, each does its own thing. So I block that in now, and I partly do it upside down because I want one thing to blend into another. Also, it stops me thinking about I've got to do this right. I like working, you know, from the other direction. It also helps me to see whether compositionally I've got something that's working as well. So double bonus thing there. And now I get a squeegee because I've got this lovely dark underneath, you see. I can just layer this on quite thickly. It's not for the faint-hearted. Seize the day. Because it's also in the foreground, you know, it can be more textured and lively, so you know that's something we can enjoy as well. Now if I want to put a few grasses and things like that in here, get a piece of, this is a paper that had the wax on it, but I don't want to kind of make a total meal of it just yet. I could mask a little bit off like that and come in there. Again, I'm still working upside down. Just kind of, I can always add more later. It helps me to just not obliterate everything that I've just painted. Obviously, I'm not quite sure of the angle of these things. I think I've got that going the wrong way. So it really should be going this way. Just really just layering that in like so. Now I'm going to use some Pan Pastel and just thinking what colour would be useful here. I'm going to go for a green actually. So I have a green Pan Pastel that is Hansa Yellow Extra Dark. That's the colour there. So because I have all this wax and stuff on already, I can would normally be doing this flat. I wouldn't be doing this. I'm just doing this for you guys so you can see. Now, I tend to use colours that aren't toxic anyway. Just going to tip that colour a little bit out onto my palette so I can get it up with the roller. I'm going to just roll that. Now we're getting a really interesting surface. Turn it upside down so I can see what I'm up to now. Bring you a bit closer as well. Hi Debrida, hi Helen. Now I'm just bringing you closer up, as close as I can, so you can see the pigment and the way that it's sitting inside that wax and paint. Okay, so there's quite a strong surface that builds up when you use that pigment. So you can use it in different ways. You can do, obviously work flat is better. Vertical is not recommended, but only for demos. But also, putting it on wax and paint on your roller, and then picking up the pigment that you've put down onto your palette and rolling that on. I could even roll that onto the trees, and that would be quite interesting. Say I wanted to just harmonize a little bit here, for example. See, I could roll that pigment in. It's got the wax in it, in there, over the tree. You get a lovely surface as well. So there's other ways of applying pigment. I can also use the wax paper and transfer it directly. If I've got wax on, if I've got wax on the paper, which is what we use for that, and I've got pigment on here, I could make a transfer of that, on here, say. You can press it on or use your brayer. But you get a really soft, yeah, it's cool, isn't it? Isn't that cool? Molto bello, grazie mille. Isn't that cool? I just think it's just such a nice way of painting without painting. So how many things we can do in our paintings. I'm going to stop there for the moment because it's actually looking good, and I've got to obviously work on these trees, but this is great and I don't want to spoil it at this stage. So just getting a little closer then to that, how that transfer has worked, and that sort of in here against that, and against these lines which I made with the squeegee, with the Messermeister, and these ones which that one I printed on, and that one which I rolled on. So I've got three different ways that I applied that paint. So that's something for you guys to perhaps try and practice. But in all seriousness, there's nothing for me to do here. I could raise a few of these over and play around with it, but sometimes to get this is really difficult. But getting your color values right, getting your warm dark, your cool mid, and your warm light, and this is actually a warm light sitting over a cool mid, then it just pops. Okay, thank you so much for joining me in my studio. Laura did my hair, by the way. That's why it's looking so shiny. So she's a hairdresser as well. Yes, I think so. I think it really is important to be careful now. Less is more. And I think we get a bit overexcited sometimes, but slowing our process and practice down, can really reap rewards. It's just like slow practice when I was a musician and you had to do these scales over and over again. So fantastic. Now, just quickly, just before, thanks Helen, that's Laura, she coloured my hair for me this morning. But I want to do something interesting this week. It's our sort of last week of lockdown really, and I'll send out a Zoom email for this for people that want to join. You don't have to click on the link. I want to do something with music and painting. And so I'm going to send out a Zoom link about that, and let's see if we can use music to help us with color decisions in our paintings. So see you again next time. Bye.